When a man is secretly into you, one of the first places it shows is in the shift of his energy the moment you walk into the room. This isn't something he plans, and it's not something he can hide no matter how confident or composed he thinks he is. People can manipulate their words, but they rarely manipulate their instincts. And attraction, especially the kind he's trying to keep beneath the surface, reveals itself through instinct long before anything else. It shows up in the way he suddenly becomes more alert, as if your presence flips an internal switch he wasn't expecting. You'll notice it in the way he lifts his head more quickly when he hears your voice, or the way his eyes instinctively search for you even if he's pretending he's focused on something else. This energetic shift is subtle, but it's consistent. It's that slight pause in his conversation with someone else, not long enough to be obvious, but long enough to betray that his attention moved to you. It's that micro smile he doesn't mean to show, the softening of his expression, the small adjustment in his posture as if he's being pulled forward by something he doesn't fully understand. These things don't happen with people he's indifferent to. They happen with the woman who stands out from the background noise of his day. And what's interesting is that men often don't register these things consciously. They think they're being casual. They assume they're giving nothing away. But attraction is a force, not a strategy. And when something or someone pulls at them emotionally, the body is the first to respond, before the brain even catches up. That is why the greeting he gives you feels different. It carries a kind of brightness, an enthusiasm he doesn't extend to everyone else. Even if it's just a simple hey, it lands with more warmth, more presence, more life. You feel something in it because he feels something in it. There's also an urgency to his attention, a split-second instinct to make sure he doesn't miss the chance to acknowledge you. It's not dramatic, but it's unmistakable once you learn to read it. It's the way he leans slightly toward you without realizing it, or how his conversation speeds up right before he greets you, as if he's mentally preparing himself. His energy is reacting to you long before any words come out of his mouth. A man who likes you doesn't greet you out of habit. He greets you out of instinctual excitement. He might try to downplay it. He might try to maintain a casual front, but his body betrays him because emotional investment always leaks through the cracks of performance. Attraction makes people transparent, even when they are trying their hardest to stay composed. And if you ever doubt whether his greeting means something, pay attention to this simple truth. Men don't give their best energy to the people they don't care about. They save it, sometimes without knowing it, for the person who changes the emotional temperature of the room simply by being in it. So when his entire energy shifts in your direction, even in the smallest ways, understand this. It's not an accident. It's evidence. And the more you learn to read those tiny, instinctive signals, the harder it becomes for anyone to hide how they truly feel about you. One of the clearest signs that a man is secretly into you is the way his greeting shifts from something generic to something personalized, something that acknowledges you specifically, not just your presence. Most people greet each other on autopilot because most interactions don't require emotional investment. But attraction interrupts that autopilot. Suddenly, the greeting becomes intentional. It becomes tailored. It carries detail, memory, or effort. And that's where you'll notice the truth of how he feels. A man who likes you doesn't greet you the same way he greets everyone else. He finds ways, small, deliberate ways, to make the moment feel more intimate, more exclusive. It might be the way he uses your name more often than necessary, almost as if saying it gives him a kind of emotional grounding. Or it could be the way he adds a comment that shows he's been paying attention to your life, even when you weren't talking directly to him. Maybe he asks about something you mentioned days ago, or he brings up a detail he had no reason to remember unless he genuinely cared. This is where people misunderstand men. They assume men express interest through bold moves or dramatic gestures. But often it's the nuance that reveals the most. The personalized greeting is his way of creating emotional proximity without crossing a line he's not ready to cross yet. It's a safe move, but a telling one. It allows him to initiate connection without exposing the full depth of what he feels. And that's exactly why it matters so much, because people hide their feelings in their words, but they reveal them in the words they choose. When he greets you like this, he is signaling that he sees you differently, and he wants you to feel that difference without him having to say it outright. He might lean into humor or playfulness, not because he's trying to entertain you, but because he wants the greeting to stand out in your mind. He wants it to feel like a moment. Even if it's subtle, even if it's only a small change in tone, something in it says, I care how you feel when I speak to you. And notice this, consistency is the real giveaway. Anyone can be charming once, anyone can be warm on a good day. But when a man continuously puts that little bit of intentionality into his greeting, every time he sees you, that's not coincidence, that's not friendliness, that's emotional investment slipping through the cracks. His personalized greeting also shows vulnerability in disguise. Because by investing more in that moment, he's risking more. He's hoping, even if he won't admit it, that you'll notice, that you'll respond, that you'll meet his warmth with yours. Men very rarely personalize their energy towards someone they're indifferent to. Indifference creates neutrality. Attraction creates detail. So when his greeting feels tailored to you, when it feels like he is not just acknowledging your arrival, but welcoming it, pay attention. He's speaking the truth he isn't yet ready to say directly. And once you learn to hear that truth, it becomes impossible to ignore. When a man is secretly into you, one of the most revealing shifts happens in how quickly and warmly he lights up when you appear. It's not always something he's consciously aware of. Most of the time, it's instinctive. A person can control their words. They can control their posture. They can control the narrative they want you to see. But very few people can control their initial emotional response to someone who matters to them. That first moment, right when he sees you, is often the clearest window into his real feelings. You'll notice he doesn't greet you W. It's the same casual neutrality he uses with everyone else. His tone changes. His face softens. His eyes brighten with recognition, even if only for a second. That micro-expression, that rise in energy is the emotional truth slipping through before he has time to compose himself. And the reason it's so reliable is simple. The body responds to attraction faster than the mind can censor it. There's a psychological depth to this that most people overlook. Humans are wired to respond more positively to people who matter to them. It's a survival instinct rooted in connection. When someone gives us emotional reward, our nervous system reacts involuntarily. That's why his greeting becomes more animated or more open when it's you. Even if he's tired, distracted, or busy, your presence triggers a shift. It's subtle, but it's unmistakable once you learn to recognize it. But it's not just about enthusiasm. Sometimes the giveaway is the opposite. His greeting becomes shy, slightly awkward, or unexpectedly gentle. And that's just as revealing. When a man likes you, his greeting becomes a negotiation between his desire to move toward you and his fear of revealing too much. You'll see it in the hesitation before he speaks, the extra second of eye contact, or the way he subconsciously adjusts himself to be more presentable. Attraction doesn't just amplify confidence, it exposes vulnerability. And vulnerability is the real signal here, because men rarely allow themselves to feel exposed unless the person in front of them matters. That moment he spots you and his whole energy recalibrates. That's not strategy. That's not performance. That's truth. It shows you that you occupy emotional space in his mind even when you're not there. It shows you that he has been thinking about how he wants to show up around you. It shows you that your presence affects him, even if he's trying to hide the extent of it. When a man greets you differently, warmer, brighter, more alive, it means you've become a source of emotional reward for him. You matter in his internal landscape. You're not just another interaction. You're the interaction that shifts his state. And here's the most important part. People don't forget the person who changes their emotional weather. They don't forget the one who makes them show up differently without even trying. So when his greeting transforms the moment he sees you, understand that you've already left an imprint on him. The real question is whether you allow that awareness to help you choose connections that reflect your worth. There's a particular moment in attraction that most people underestimate, and it often appears in the smallest slice of interaction, how he responds when the greeting is over. That window right after hi, when the initial spark fades and the conversation begins, is where the truth settles. And this is where you start to see whether his interest is rooted in a passing moment or something deeper that lingers in his behavior. Because a man who is secretly into you doesn't just greet you differently, he stays differently. Watch the way he transitions from that first moment of recognition into the rhythm of the conversation. Some men reveal themselves right there, not in grand gestures, but in the subtle way they lean into the interaction. He may stand a little closer than necessary, as if proximity keeps the connection alive. He may ask a question right after greeting you, a genuine one, not a filler. It's an instinctive effort to extend the moment so it doesn't end with the greeting. And that one small attempt is loaded with intention. People don't try to elongate experiences that don't matter. They don't hold space for conversations that feel transactional. But when someone is drawn to you, they do everything I can, consciously or not, to slow the moment down. He may laugh more easily or listen more intently or mirror your energy without realizing it. Psychology calls this attunement, and it's what happens when we subconsciously align ourselves with someone we want to connect with. His body language becomes a quiet admission of his desire to stay present with you. What's truly revealing is how his attention shifts. A man who is only being polite will greet you, smile, and move on. A man who is into you turns his attention toward you, not just in you. That difference matters. Attention on you is observation. Attention toward you is intention. It means he's trying to build emotional momentum, something he wouldn't bother investing in if he didn't feel something real. And there's something else here that's easy to miss. The small moments of nervousness, not the kind that makes him awkward, but the kind that makes him more human. He might fidget with something, choose his words more carefully, or briefly lose his train of thought. These aren't signs of weakness. They're signs that you matter enough to disrupt his usual composure. Men rarely admit they're nervous around someone they like, but their behavior gives them away. Nervousness is simply desire trying to find steady ground. All of this, his attention, his effort, his subtle shift in energy, shows you what he can't always say outright, that your presence has an impact on him. But the important part is not whether he feels it, it's what he does with it. Because attraction doesn't mean much if it never develops into consistency, respect, or action. So the real insight is this: a meaningful greeting doesn't end with the hello. It expands into how he listens, how he engages, and how he chooses to stay. That continuation is where real interest lives. And if you pay attention, you'll never have to guess who values your presence, because the man who does will always show it in the moments right after the greeting. When a man greets you in a way that reveals real interest, there's always a moment T comes afterward, one most people overlook, yet it carries more truth than the greeting itself. It's the moment when he tries to deepen the exchange, when the initial spark isn't enough for him and he instinctively reaches for something more substantial. This is where his curiosity comes forward. And curiosity is one of the most honest expressions of attraction. You can feel this shift when he asks questions that aren't surface level, questions that show he wants to understand how you think, what you value, and how you see the world. These questions aren't random. They're strategic in a way he may not even be conscious of. Because when someone intrigues us, we naturally begin searching for the threads of connection. We listen more attentively. We probe a little deeper. It's not interrogation, it's investment. Think about the difference between someone who asks, "How are you?" versus someone who says, "What's been the most unexpectedly good thing in your week?" One asks for a status update. The other asks to enter your inner world. And entering your inner world is something people only attempt when something about you pulls them closer. Men who are secretly into you often reveal themselves in this kind of conversation. They ask follow-ups, they remember details, they circle back to things you've said days or weeks before. That memory isn't a coincidence, it's a marker of emotional priority. The mind holds on to what the heart finds meaningful, even if the person hasn't fully recognized it yet. This effort to understand you is also a form of admiration. When a man cares about more than your appearance, when he becomes genuinely interested in your thoughts, your goals, your fears, the things that make you light up, he is showing you a deeper layer of his attraction. And what's fascinating is that this desire to understand someone often precedes the desire to pursue them. It's the bridge between interest and intention. You might even notice that he listens to you with a kind of alertness that he doesn't offer to others. When you speak, he isn't waiting for his turn. He's actually absorbing what you're saying. His responses become more thoughtful, more aligned with your perspective, more attuned to the emotional undercurrent beneath your words. This level of presence is rare, and it's one of the clearest indications that something about you matters to him. But here's the deeper truth that often goes unspoken. Curiosity is emotional vulnerability in disguise. When a man asks meaningful questions, he's not just trying to know you, he's giving you access to know him. Because every thoughtful question reveals what he values, what he prioritizes, and what he hopes to connect with. His curiosity becomes a doorway into his sincerity, and that's why this moment is so powerful. It tells you that the greeting wasn't accidental, the energy wasn't convenient, and the attention wasn't temporary. It shows that he's not simply pulled toward your presence, he's invested in your essence. Here is your 550-word expansion of Key Point 6, written in a smooth Matthew Hussey style tone, intellectual, grounded, psychological, and conversational, with a strong closing line. There comes a moment in every meaningful connection when you have to ask yourself a simple but uncomfortable question. Am I showing up as the fullest version of myself? Or am I shrinking to maintain peace, approval, or emotional access to someone who hasn't earned it? Because the truth is, the most powerful shift you can make in any relationship isn't about strategy, timing, or learning some perfect line to say. It's about returning to yourself with such honesty and clarity that the other person can no longer misinterpret who you are, what you deserve, or where your boundaries lie. When you operate from this place, you stop negotiating with your worth. You stop trying to convince someone to value you. You stop twisting yourself into emotional shapes just to keep things easier. Instead, you begin living in a way that naturally filters out what isn't aligned. And this is the part people often underestimate. The moment you stop betraying yourself, the dynamic with the other person changes, sometimes dramatically, because when someone is used to you over-giving, over-explaining, or over-tolerating, your self-respect feels to them like a disruption. It rewrites the script they've been relying on. And this isn't about becoming cold or distant. It's about becoming rooted. There's a difference. When you're rooted, you don't collapse at the first sign of inconsistency. You don't panic when they pull back. You don't chase validation because your identity no longer hangs on whether or not they say the right thing, choose you fast enough, or meet your needs effortlessly. You begin interacting from a place of internal steadiness rather than emotional scarcity. Ironically, this shift often reveals someone's true level of interest more clearly than any conversation ever could, because when you stop over-functioning, the space you create forces the other person to reveal whether they were relying on your effort more than their own. Some people rise to meet you. They notice the shift. They show up more intentionally. They contribute. They step forward. Others drift back into the comfort of their old habits, showing you they were never as invested as you hoped. Both outcomes are gifts. One gives you partnership, the other gives you freedom. But this inner shift requires discipline. It requires getting comfortable with the idea that not everyone will choose you, even when you show up beautifully. It requires understanding that rejection isn't always a failure. Sometimes it's the universe redirecting you to a place where your strength isn't seen as a threat, but as an invitation. And most importantly, it requires believing that being yourself, fully, unapologetically, is not a risk. The real risk is abandoning yourself just to fit into a space that was never built to hold you. When you stop shrinking, you attract relationships where you don't have to. When you stop overgiving, you meet people who give back. And when you stop betraying your own standards, the world around you rearranges itself to match them. The moment you choose yourself, you stop losing anyone worth keeping. And that choice becomes the beginning of every great love that follows.